Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about the effect of this channel on me. It was an interesting question. I have another video about why a lot of people I know in the industry would never make a channel like this, and you can go watch it. But this one was a response. This video is a response to a question I got asked by Shearsner, who asked, since you've started a YouTube channel, has it changed your mind about any part of game development or reinforced your professional experiences? Yes. In fact, it's done several of those. But I want to kick off the one that was the biggest surprise to me, which is a personal thing that had nothing to do with how I develop or how I think of my professional experiences. And that was very soon after making this channel, I realized that many people, not all, that's the other thing. I've learned to caveat every sentence out of my mouth because otherwise people go, it's not everybody. A lot of people feel a need, an almost obsessive, compulsive need to take every story I say and immediately categorize everybody in it into heroes and villains. It got to the point where I did multiple videos about it and I talked about nuance, and it doesn't seem to stop some people. They're like, nope, you obviously meant that person was the hero or that person was the villain. Well, and it made me think about it. It's interesting. The day that Shearsner asked me this question, I was walking the beast, and I walk her like 3 or 4 times a day. So I see all kinds of things happen. About a block from my house, there's a fairly major street, pretty high speed limit, curvy, which is scary because it's near an elementary school. And for some reason, where I live, they don't think sidewalks should be made. So a lot of the streets either have no sidewalks or only have sidewalks on one side, which means when I'm walking the dog, I frequently have to cross the street if I want to stay on a sidewalk. Someone had parked their semi-truck on this major street, which is legal, and there's a lot of parking on the side. People often park overnight there. But semis are very wide. So as I was approaching where I could see this major street from my own side street, I could see that the guy who had the semi had walked up to it, and on the side facing the lane had opened a door and was futzing with something in the cab of the semi. A car came around the corner. It had to swerve into the lane. This is only a 2-lane street. It had to swerve across the yellow line into the lane on the other side, and it honked at him, obviously upset that he was in the middle of the road, because his semi went right up to the edge of where you could park. So the door swinging out and him standing there, he was blocking about half the lane. So this car honked at him. He just turned around and went, "Stop driving so fast." And that was it. And I remember thinking, now, right there and then, I already believe in this story. There are some of you who are going, well, obviously the bad guy in the story was the guy driving shouldn't have been driving that fast because it's curvy and, it's only 2 lanes. A lot of people going, well, that semi-truck driver was an idiot. He should have gone in through the other side, through the side facing the sidewalk. I remember thinking, wow, that was close. Was the car going a little fast? I actually don't think so. I think it was going at the speed limit. But for as curvy as the street is in that area, yeah, he probably should have slowed down. The semi-truck driver, I think it showed a lack of good judgment to be standing halfway in the lane like that, near a curve. I didn't assign a hero or a villain to the story. I just saw 2 people behaving in a way that I thought showed poor judgment. Is there a bad guy in the story? I don't know. Is there a good guy in the story? I don't know. But I remember it because the horn and the yelling made Abby, my dog, look over because she gets very concerned when she sees people upset. A crying kid makes her very concerned. And I could tell that she also didn't think, well, there was a bad guy there. She's like, something bad is happening over there. I wonder if I need to go over there. This is how I live my life. I see these things happen, and I don't immediately assign heroes and villains to them. But a lot of people do, and that surprised me. It floored me, actually, at how frequently it happens and that it continuously happens, and it keeps happening. Now let's answer Schiersner's question more precisely about how has this affected my own idea of game development and my professional experiences. Well, first off, this channel has absolutely reinforced in my brain hole the importance of my note-taking over the last several decades. Because there have been stories I've told, and people who've worked with me have contacted me and said, no, that's not what happened. And I pulled out my note and read it to them. And not only were they wrong about who was there, because I wrote down who was there, they were wrong about when it happened. Because since a lot of my notes are dated, I'm like, no, this happened before this happened. So, but the reverse has happened. I've misremembered things, and before I've done a video here, I've gone and looked at my notes and went, oh, that's what happened, or that's who said that, or that's when that happened. And I've corrected it before I've spoken on here. It's really like my first anecdote about the semi-truck driver. It's really reinforced to me that people not only see things differently, but then they subsequently remember it differently. And then over time, it gets completely mangled in memory. So they may have seen the same thing as me, but over time, they may remember it differently. But sometimes they see it differently from me right at that point. And that's why I wish more people took notes, because I would love to talk to someone about things that have happened who also took notes like I did, so we could compare our notes and not our memories. It has helped. Another thing this thing has helped with professionally is it's provided closure to some of the things that have happened to me that were not pleasant. I have spoken offline with several Carbine folks, and we've reached a much better understanding of what life at Carbine was like. Many of them even said to me, I had no idea you were going through that. And I replied the same thing. I had no idea you were going through what you were going through. I thought it was unique to me. I didn't know that was happening to everybody. And a lot of that has to do with, I've talked about how Carbine was very compartmentalized. And I think now we both have a better understanding of each other and our experiences there. And I can tell you this, with that understanding came a lot less hate. And not just at each other. Like if they were mad at me because they thought I did something, and I'm like, no, that didn't come from me. It also meant they didn't just redirect the hate somewhere else. It really made them go, I wonder what else I'm thinking that's wrong. So I've just found that just talking that stuff out helped lower that trauma level a bit. So that's helped. But I'd say the other thing that's really been reinforced in my mind is nothing you make is really yours. I've talked about how you can lose control of an IP because you make it for someone else and they own it, and maybe they sell it later. Or maybe you own it, but there are a lot of constraints on it. Like I own the Temple of Elemental Evil code, but I can't just give it away. There are constraints on how I can use it. One thing that really surprised me in this channel was how many of you game players play a game and then take a perceived ownership of it. That your perception of the game is the right perception. That your experience in the game is the right experience. And then you will argue to death over your interpretation. We saw that happen on the Fallout TV show where people saw the whiteboard and assumed, well, the bomb must have fell in that year, where there was an arrow and to where the bomb went, meaning you could interpret that as the bomb fell sometime after that year. Nope, people will argue, my interpretation is correct, and therefore everybody is wrong and idiots. What's weird about that for me is when people argue with me on this channel about my own games. In other words, I know that game. I helped make that lore. I know what the intent was. All you know is how you perceived that intent. So it's really strange when people argue with me about my own IPs that I've created. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like discussing my IPs, and I really love it when people go, well, you know what I walked away with? You may have intended for people to think this, but I walked away with this other thing. That's what's interesting. Where it really breaks down when people get personal. And I've said this. And people go, Tim, you're an idiot. You obviously meant this. Tim, you're stupid. Have you forgotten about this? That's where it just gets like, if that's how you're going to argue, I'm not gonna talk about it. And I've had people go, well, that's a horrible rule. You can't just walk away from someone because they got mad about it. Yeah, I can. It's what I choose to do. And you may think it's a dumb rule, but I have better things in my life to do than have a discussion with people who just wants to throw personal attacks at me. That's my rule. That's where I tap out. I stop reading comments that do that, and I certainly don't engage with people who do that. But if they want to discuss, like one of my IPs, and talk about the details and what they thought it meant and what I thought it meant, that's fun. That's fun to me. But I do realize now that there's a lot of people out there that that isn't the fun part. The fun part for them is the personal attacks and feeling better and feeling like, they're smarter or more clever, or they know the right thing and you're an idiot. And like I said, it's super weird for me to make a game and be told by someone else that my intent was something different. That level of personal confidence is beyond my ability to understand. So those are probably the biggest things that have happened in the last year on this channel that have affected me professionally. I now think differently, very much differently about taking notes. I try to do a better job with it. I try to think of things that are a bit traumatic as maybe it's just my view of it. Maybe I should talk to some other people about what they thought about that situation. And then finally, how nothing I end up actually doing in a game, I have 100% ownership of it. Even if I legally do, I kind of don't. So that's the biggest takeaway that this channel has impressed upon me. So I hope that answers your question, Shearsner.